Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. This is a timeline of the return of the Lord, and it's not necessarily accurate. I never said it was, and I always suggested I would shift this along if need be, and the need be because we don't exactly know when the Lord's going to return. We don't exactly know when the Antichrist is going to appear or when the 7-year period is going to start. All we know is that there's wars and rumors of wars coming. There's a one world government coming. There is a one world currency. There is pestilence and economic collapse and famine coming. All these reach their peak during the first 3.5 years of the 7-year period, aka the four horsemen of the apocalypse. When they ride, that's the indication. Now, what we're going to have prior to that is, I believe, a very bad situation, including the precipice of nuclear war and economic collapse and famine. And isn't that interesting? All those things are happening right now as we are heading into a depression if we're not there already. And all that being said, we're not quite there yet for war and desperation on the world stage, but we are moving there, and I think everybody sees that we are moving there. And I think the Antichrist will pop his head up just when we're all desperate, just at the point where we're, chaos is about to break out across the world, world famine, complete and total economic collapse and depression. I think the Antichrist has to step in before that. If we if the world blows up to a situation where we're living like it's 200 years ago, well, then the Antichrist probably isn't going to be able to bring in a digital currency very easily because no one's going to have money for internet. No one's going to have money for this, that, or the other. So he has to come in just before we lose everything. And I think we're getting very, very close to that point. This is warnews247.com, and this war in Ukraine, Russia, appears to be setting itself up to be the war that sends us into global nuclear war, and in fact World War III. And indeed, it is World War III. NATO is fighting Russia right now. This article says officials admit British commandos are fighting Ukraine. Russian commander, next escalation will be nuclear. Now, if you watch BP Earthwatch, he posted a video in Russian on a Russian TV show that the Russian commander, whomever it was, said, you know what, we've gotten to a point in war where the next step is nothing other than nuclear war. We can't do anything else on the ground with conventional weapons. The next thing that has to happen is nuclear war. And he said, we cannot beat NATO without nuclear weapons. Our conventional weapons will not beat NATO. And that's why we, as Russia, created the nuclear force to take out NATO or defend against NATO. So he specifically said the next step is not any more conventional weapons, but it is all-out nuclear war. Now, World War III means that the world is at war. And the definition of that would be, well, are many nations of the world fighting against each other? They are. Not only do you have Iran, Israel, China, Taiwan, the situation in Turkey, and then the Turks up in northern Syria there. Not only do you have that, but of course the major Ukraine-Russian war. For the first time since the start of the war in Ukraine, it says there is an official admission of British Special Forces involvement. Britain's Royal Marines have taken part in a high-risk covert operation in Ukraine. Now, this on top of news that the U.S. Patriot missile system is heading to Ukraine to defend against attacks on Ukrainian power grid that Russia is doing. Russia said, we will attack those Patriot missile systems. Those Patriot missile systems use, GPS. They use all the technology that the United States has. This is toe-to-toe, technology to technology, effectively top of the line at this point. And This means that U.S. is directly fighting Russia. This means that Britain is directly fighting Russia. This means effectively that if that is the case, then Article 4 and 5 of the NATO agreement could be instituted at any point in time. So this is pretty interesting. It says, according to the Russians, British forces are present in every armed formation in Ukraine. So it's not a story about one or two British forces or some rogue mercenaries, etc. British forces are present in every armed formation in Ukraine. The British plan and direct deep strikes deep into Russian supply lines. They are the ones who select targets and direct the HIMARS missiles. British national newspaper The Times reports that the Royal Marines took part in discrete operations on Ukrainian soil, lasting several months. This is huge, guys, and this is not in the mainstream media. They are not talking about this as much as they should be, if at all. We are at war. I've been saying it. Many others have been saying it, but the world is not listening. The people out there, it's as if no one cares. It's the normalcy bias. Everything is awesome where you live, and as long as the battle isn't where you live, you don't care about what's happening there. Meanwhile, we have two of the major world powers, military world powers, are fighting toe-to-toe, and the next escalation by Russian admirals or commanders' estimation, the next step is nuclear. If the U.S. goes in there and toe-to-toe, technology to technology with conventional weapons, Russia knows it can't beat NATO at that level. Neither country can beat each other significantly or well with conventional forces, certainly not the manpower that NATO could put behind it with the millions and millions of soldiers and all the money going against a nation of, 30 million in Russia. Again, that means that Russia will have to pull out what it has prepared for many years, and that is the nuclear weapons and that side of things, which was meant and created in the first place to take out NATO anyways. So this is the inevitable conclusion of this. And what I suspect, and I'll leave it at this, what I suspect is that we will see nuclear war. We will survive it. It will cause the collapse. It will finally trigger the collapse in the economy, in the stock markets of the United States. There will be famine. There will be massive problems. And a world leader will come in and say, peace, peace, peace and security. And he will broker an agreement, maybe with Russia, with the world leaders. He will say, look, let's bring in digital currency. We'll agree to this. We'll agree to that. We'll make everything awesome again. And he will set up a peaceful time for about 7 years. He will make an agreement with the many for a period of 7 years. And this is the leader of the world, known as the Antichrist in the Bible. So, folks, I think this is coming. This timeline is not exactly correct. It's going to shift into next year, it appears. And so maybe for the next video, I'll shift everything here. And I've always said, I'll shift it. I don't know when the Lord's coming back. I don't have the inside scoop. Nobody knows except the Father in heaven. Jesus doesn't even know when he's going to return. But we can have an idea when the things get to the precipice of world nuclear war, nuclear annihilation, famine, a complete total economic collapse to bring in the new digital currency. That's when we can start the timeline and say, okay, this is the countdown. The 7 years has started. Now we can look for 3.5 years after that, the abomination of desolation in the third temple in Israel. And that's when the wrath of God falls. That's his red line. Wars have been happening for many, many years on this planet. So that's nothing new. But when the abomination of desolation happens in the third temple, and the Antichrist, the world leader, declares himself as God and says that he is God, that's when God says, that's it, time is up. I'm going to clean up the world and make a right to all the wrongs. And folks, we're getting very close. 2023 is going to be incredible. I think we thought 2022 was going to be incredible, and it has in many ways. And it has not gotten better. It's gotten worse with the war in Ukraine, so I was correct about that as well. Things will not get better. They will get worse, and anybody who says things are getting better has their head in the sand. I think most people recognize what's happening. They just don't want to admit to it or believe that it's ever going to affect them, and it will, and it is, as each of us has less and less money to spend right now on anything. Food, price of food is going up. The budgets are getting tight. Our budget is getting tight. We have to pick and choose what we're going to spend money on. So be prepared, folks. God never said you wouldn't see hard times. He said he would always provide for you, but he expects you to be wise, to work hard, just like the ant prepares for winter. Go to the ant, ye sluggard. Just like that, God expects us to be prepared, just like Joseph in Egypt. When he had the dream of 7 good years and 7 bad years, he prepared for 7 good years so that they could survive in Egypt for the 7 bad years. And that's what the Christians need to do. He was an example. He was an example of Jesus, for example. He was an example of a Christian and a leader, and being wise and preparing for the things that he knows is coming. The Bible says what's coming. We need to prepare for it. We don't know exactly when it's going to come, but we know it's coming. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.